The RNC goes out with a bang. Most powerful moments from the convention. Psycho libs mob old ladies in the street. And Pelosi doesn't want Biden to debate.
At the Democrat National Convention, Joe Biden and his party repeatedly assailed America as a land of racial, economic, and social injustice. So tonight I ask you a simple question. How can the Democrat Party ask to lead our country when it spends so much time tearing down our country?
Got to give the RNC credit, folks. They didn't just make last week look like the JV team. They spiked the football in the DNC's end zone, did a backflip, then ran up into the stands and asked out the prom queen, and she said yes. Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this week of compare and contrast between Democrats and Republicans. What was the Democrat convention? America sucks, but with some socialism and a whole lot more social justice, it'll be almost tolerable, but still pretty racist. That was what you saw. Oh, and Donald Trump is Hitler and killing everyone and destroying everything. That was the message. And then this week you had the RNC, where you had inspiring speeches by people dedicated to this country, patriots who believe in a better future for all of us, a future that we can attain if we continue on our current path. And it was powerful. There were some very good speeches. And I'll tell you, I am a skeptic usually about pageantry in politics. I'm not somebody that gets excited about this. And, you know, I always say the State of the Union address should probably just be posted online. I'm not a fan of these things in general. The RNC was very well done from a production standpoint, messaging, just the quality of it as a visual, right? I mean, this is really a long, in a sense, a long campaign commercial. And it was compelling. It was meaningful. And I was very impressed. And I went into it thinking I was going to have to tell you that it was a missed opportunity. It's not. The GOP now has the momentum. That's what we're going to be talking about today. The Trump administration has achieved a turnabout here. They've managed to stop the Democrats from being on offense and for the first time in months put them on defense. And you love to see it. It's a beautiful thing. I will say the Trump speech last night, look, folks, I tell you the truth. I watched the whole thing as it happened. The speech was fine, a little bit not focused enough, and about 30 minutes too long, which is way above what it should have been for a speech. It was way too long. But the fireworks display afterwards was pretty amazing. The entire night, the way that it was set up, the backdrop of the White House. Oh, the Hatch Act. Yeah, good luck with that, libs. Cry more, libs, about the Hatch Act. But overall, it was a huge success. I thought the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, did a very solid job introducing him, referring to him as the people's president. And now everybody can really see. In a way, I feel like there was an even greater focus on the message because you don't have that. Yes, there's an energy. There's a sense of frenetic excitement when you have a huge auditorium, amphitheater, whatever, full of people at a convention, and they're all milling about in the background, and you're having the big speeches going on. But this time around, it was just the distillation of what the arguments are for each side, presented for people to watch in the comfort of their homes. And so that's what we were able to do, focus entirely on that message. And unless you're one of the very small handful of people involved physically in being present at this RNC, we all had the same experience of watching it together. But what an incredible victory for the administration that they're presenting this competent, well-produced, and dare I say, earnest and heartfelt pitch to the American people about what the future looks like with 4 more years of Trump as we are getting through this COVID pandemic. We're on the other side of the worst of it. I'm very confident of that now. All the numbers are supporting that. But as we're moving into this better 4 more years, And really all we want is, I just want the first 3 years of Trump continued for 4 more years. You know, the pandemic, that's just something that hits you. You know, sometimes it's just not your day. You know, the bus runs off the road and you're standing in the wrong place, and America got hit. It's not Trump's fault, and I think that he's done a good job of managing an incredibly complicated set of circumstances. But what do the Democrats offer? And this was what was really in such stark relief last night. I mean, it was almost like if you were writing the script for a movie, it couldn't have been more dramatic and clear. You had the president and all the different RNC speakers last night who are making their case to the American people. And they're doing so, yes, with the backdrop, the majestic backdrop of the White House. And they weren't wearing enough masks and social distancing. They thought they were there for John Lewis's 9th funeral, or they thought they were there for a Black Lives Matter social justice protest that involved burning down a convenience store or two and, looting a Macy's. So no masks, right? No social distancing. Who cares? No problem there. But after the event, which, as I've said, was just, they crushed it. They did a fantastic job. And the DNC was just weak sauce. The only highlight of the DNC was that Joe Biden didn't, on camera, pass out in his oatmeal and start muttering to himself about, feeding the squirrels. That's it. That's the only thing that they could really point to and say, wow, that was really meaningful. And that's a very low bar. But what happened afterwards? What did we see occurring last night and being shared all over social media? The savage, angry Biden voter mob accosted people who were attending the RNC as soon as they left the White House grounds. So there's substantial security to enter the White House grounds, obviously, during this, but you got to go home at some point. Not everyone can have a sleepover in the East Wing. So what do? They waited and camped out outside, and it's disgusting what they did, what they said. There's video of these Biden voters, these Trump-hating Biden voters, running up and extending the middle finger, actually 2 middle fingers, right in the face in a way that's meant to be menacing, meant to be threatening of an elderly woman. Okay, little old lady's walking out of the White House RNC event with her husband, and she can't be more than 5'2", and some lunatic MSNBC watching, DNC supporting Biden voter runs up to her, cursing in her face. Imagine if that were your grandma. If I could get away with it legally, I would sock that punk in the mouth, knock out a tooth, and not feel bad about it. But, of course, that's illegal. Although, I don't know, you could claim it's borderline assault to run up in someone's face and start screaming in their face. See, this is what the libs do. Everything they can to terrorize, to frighten, to unnerve, just short of legally justifying, I think morally it'd be entirely justified, legally justifying just giving him a haymaker right in the jaw. Oh, he hit me. That's what they would all say. I've never seen such a collection of pathetic beta males in my life as I have at all of these protests. Notice that they always think they're so brave and tough when they surround people who are by themselves, when they surround people who are elderly, who are infirm, and sometimes they hit them. Sometimes they do attack them. Right? You saw that 70-year-old in Kenosha trying to defend his store, went up and just hit him right in the mouth, knocked him out cold. These people are evil. These people are evil. And it was so clear to anyone watching last night that these Biden voters are such vicious morons. They think they have the moral high ground while they ambush and scream threats in the face of an elderly woman leaving a political event. Look, I'm sorry your DNC was pathetic, you losers, but it's not her fault. And I think we should all see that the Democrat Party has turned into, and I mean this now, the Democrat base in the era of Trump has turned into a grotesque celebration of militant stupidity and mental illness masquerading as activism and social justice. These people are sick. There's something wrong with them. Well-adjusted, honorable, decent people don't do what these savages were doing last night. And it's not like this is a one-off. They show up at officials' houses. In the era of Trump, it's been anything goes. Whatever they think they can get away with without necessarily having to deal with force in response from the people that are, they will go right up to the edge where they'll still claim if you were to, just throw a right cross into one of these punks that, it was just a mostly peaceful protest. And go back to Brooklyn and watch Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes. That's what we're dealing with. These people are completely out of their minds. And if you were able to do a poll, and hat tip Dave Reboy on this one, because he put this out on Twitter. I think it's so true. If you could tell, so many of the most lunatic of these Democrat protesters, so many of them are teachers, social workers, people that are supposed to be ethical, considerate, kind, helping people, molding the youth. But they've really been overcome with a Marxist frenzy. They've completely lost all normal connection to their fellow human beings. And so they feel entirely justified in doing stuff like this. They surrounded and yelled at, and look, there's so much audio out there, but it's just a lot. It's just, there's bleeps everywhere. It's all blank, blank, blank. They're just cursing, screaming F-bombs. So it's not really, it wouldn't be good radio, but it's all over the internet. You can see it. They surrounded and yelled at Rand Paul outside the RNC last night as he's leaving what was a very well-produced, excellent, powerful, memorable event, unlike the DNC, which was garbage. They surrounded Senator Rand Paul, who, as we know, was almost beaten to death by his lib neighbor on his own front lawn, just because he didn't like what Rand Paul stood for. That's what libs do. And was almost shot to death by an insane Bernie Sanders supporter. So I think that's meaningful. This is a guy who's really been through it. He has been the target of really 2 attempted murders by libs in the last 3 years. And they surround him and they're yelling about justice for Breonna Taylor and how Rand Paul doesn't care about black lives. It's not possible to be more ignorant than these crowds of Democrats are. It's not possible to be more uncouth, savage, stupid, rude, dishonorable. I mean, they're setting new records all the time. Rand Paul introduced the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act into the Senate. Rand Paul may be the single most ardent supporter of actual police reform in the United States Senate, maybe even in the United States government. And you're going to mob him with his wife present and threaten them and scream in their faces on the street and yell epithets and curses at them? Only because they see Republican, they see white male Republican attack. That's all. That's all they know. Did this happen at any DNC event? Has this happened at any Democrat fundraiser? Did anyone do this to the Obama administration? Was anyone waiting outside of events, waiting outside the DNC and engaging in this spittle-laden, expletive-filled ambush? No. This is not on both sides, friends. This is not a we do it and they do it and let the chips fall where they may. The Democrat Party has gone insane. The people that are now running the primary narratives, the people that are in charge of the messaging for the Democrats and the Democrat base have completely lost their minds. They need to be brought back to reality. And I mean this. The only way it's going to happen is if Donald Trump wins 4 more years. The only way that we'll achieve any justice for all of this insanity is if Trump wins again. When you're thinking about this as you go in to cast your vote this November, just remember that if Trump wins, it'll emotionally shatter millions, perhaps tens of millions of leftists across the country. They will actually wail in public. They will rend their garments. They will cry and weep and scream and cry and weep and break things. What they did last night is a reminder for all of us that the Democrats will have earned every single second of those 4 more years of Donald J. Trump. Every second of it. What does COVID-19 have to do with you losing your home? Well, the FBI knows that cyber theft is up 75% from the beginning of the pandemic, and home title theft is a cybercrime. Here's how it works. Your home's title's online. The bad guys find it. They use a quitclaim deed to switch you off and put them on your home's title. Then they take out loans and stick you with the payments. You might not even find this out until you get a foreclosure notice. You've got to take action now. Create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock. Usual identity theft services don't protect you. Home Title Lock is specifically designed to protect your home's title online. Go now to HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. You can also register your home's address to see if you're already a victim and don't know it. Again, HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code BUCK for 30 free days of protection.
And we're still struggling, Mika, because there's a guy in the White House who wants to prove a point.
Yeah, not shocked at all by the sort of grotesque display that was against the law. More super grossed out and really worried about the people who gathered there, who put their lives at risk to kind of squish together and support the president.
I'm like so grossed out, like squished together, like they're just so unseemly. And the Mika and Joe show is beyond parody at this point. You know what I find gross? Everything that's gone on in the Mika and Joe show for, I don't know, the last 10 years or so, but who knows how long. I'm talking about things getting squished together. So, anyway, gross. Yeah, no, they're there to just trash the people that were sitting outside of the RNC. Remember, we've all been told now many times by scientists in the past, at least, that outdoor mask wearing is unnecessary. But now we're told that if you don't do it, you're a bad person. And it's against the law. Sure it is. It's against the law. Why don't they go try to arrest the president on the lawn of the White House because his guests aren't wearing enough masks? Play 4.
And seeing all those people sitting side by side for so long with no mask, and then to hear after it, the White House explanation is, we're all going to get it eventually.
Well, what I thought of, and I've just been covering this for so many months now, is that the history books will be written about this chapter in our lives at some point, and it will show events like that and say that in the middle of a pandemic, at a time when the country decided to shut down, when there were 5,000 roughly people were infected, and at a time when there were more than 5 million infected, we started having events like that again. I mean, it's really frustrating. It's mind-boggling, and I think it shows that there's certain segments of the population still have not learned or are not paying attention to what this virus is.
Yeah. Dr. Sanjay has been wrong about this at every step of the way, but thanks anyway, CNN. But don't worry, this was the ninth justice gathering of the week in Washington, D.C. It was all about BLM. That's what they thought they were there for, so the rules don't apply. Even the crazy Democrats, at least in the leadership circles, those at the top of the Democrat apparatus, recognize they got a problem here. They've got an issue because the American people have started to really see what's going on here with these protests, what BLM is all about. None of this is a surprise. None of this is a surprise. And eventually it wears thin, right? The routine that we've seen people in very prominent positions doing, where the media, for example, will always find a way to tell you that there's a justified underlying need for these protests. And so everything is acceptable then. We've been lectured for years by the media about how Trump has coarsened the discourse. But while Biden voters build guillotines to put on public display, as they did yesterday in D.C., and scream profanity in the face of little old ladies, our oh-so-brave journos are silent. They deserve nothing but your contempt. Don't ever, ever forget that. I am increasingly seeing that the CNN millionaire anchors are a little bit worried. Usually they would just dismiss any criticism of the vile, ignorant mob as distracting from the overwhelming desire for justice. It's a distraction to talk about the violence, the looting, the arson. This is about justice. No, it's not, actually. It's about people being angry and taking it out on people that they've been told by the Democrats and by the media are responsible for why they're angry. But it's not their fault. No. People really that are that frustrated, that are that enraged, need to look inward. What's really going on? Why is this happening? But normal people will see, for example, the surrounding of Kentucky Senator Rand Paul after the RNC, and they'll think, what a bunch of angry lunatics, right? Because Rand Paul is, in fact, committed to criminal justice reform. You're going to mob Rand Paul? Better than any Democrat on the issue. Done more for incarcerated Black Americans, incarcerated people in general, than anybody else in the Senate. You're going to go after Rand Paul? But no, they'll find a way. In CNN, they'll find a way to tell everybody that this is, we're pouncing on it. That's what they'll say. We're pouncing on their absurdity and their insanity. You remember a couple of days ago when I told you about what the Biden move was going to be? This was remarkable. I said, guess what? Get ready for it. I even told I didn't want to make producer Mark go through all the transcripts and stuff, so I don't think we actually have. But just you guys heard me. It was this week. I said Biden's next move is going to be blaming Trump for the idiocy of the riots and all the things that are going on right now. Blaming Trump for essentially Biden voters doing all this stuff. So Biden's base ruins the country as much as they can, acts like total barbarians. The Democrats at every turn try to stop law enforcement from intervening, undermine law enforcement as a general proposition. And then when this monster of the Democrats' own creation finally becomes a problem for them, this is what they're going to do. I told you they will say it's on Trump's watch, though. So they're basically setting the fire, body checking and throwing elbows at the firefighters. And then when the fire's not put out fast enough, yelling, oh, gosh, this fire department really, the mayor's not getting things done well enough. That's what the Democrats are doing right now. Joe Biden put this out last night. Remember, every example of violence Donald Trump decries has happened on his watch, under his leadership, during his presidency. What did I tell you, folks? Come on, did I? Producer Mark, I did see this one coming. It's true. Saw this one coming. This is exactly the predictable move that they would make under the circumstances. Biden's newly discovered, oh crap, my base is rioting so much it actually might cost me the election. It's not a moral position. It's a cynical political posture from ruthless Democrats like Biden, devoid of honor or courage. Even The Atlantic, a left-wing... The Atlantic is for psycho libs who got above a 1,200 on their SATs. That's kind of what I'd say about that's the definition of who reads The Atlantic. Biden should go immediately to Wisconsin, George Packer writes in The Atlantic. He should speak for justice and for safety, for reform and against riots, for the crying need to bring the country together. Oh, so the Democrats set these fires, literally set these fires all over the country. And now they want to send Biden in there with a bucket of water and act like he's a hero? They've got a problem, folks. They're panicking. They're concerned about this. They should be. They should be. I'm just going to tell you, in a pandemic year, politics is not fair, right? You could get hit with a massive terrorist attack that was being planned for years under your predecessor, Bill Clinton. There are things that can happen when you come into office that are beyond your control. But you're going to get blamed for it. You get a cyclical recession, you're going to get blamed for it. The pandemic, while Trump, I think, has managed it well, has obviously made this a really tough year for America. And that's difficult for people. I mean, when you're thinking about who you want to put in charge of the country, what leadership you support going forward, you do have to look at the state of things around you. And I wouldn't begrudge somebody a moment's pause who was a swing voter in the last election, who went for Trump, maybe even had gone for Obama before, who this time around was saying, well, hold on a second. Is it really true about the COVID pandemic and Trump mishandling it? I can understand how they're, and if the Democrats were just a serious party of adults with real ideas that weren't a bunch of socialists obsessed with racial division in pretending that it's social justice, that weren't obsessed with these things that tear the country apart. Basically, all the Democrats had to do was not be crazy, and they couldn't do it. They can't help themselves. Because I do think that the president, if he had a candidate who wasn't clearly way past his prime and also just a decades-long mediocrity in every sense, if they had a candidate who was just a little bit more on the ball, a candidate who was a little bit more together, and a message of technocratic, we're going to keep you safe, and we're going to get things back on track, and we're going to beat this virus, and we're going to reach across the aisle, and Trump's record on COVID speaks for itself. There are ways they could have really gotten normal people who aren't like you and me. If you're listening to the show, you're more informed about politics than about 99% of the country. But, people that don't pay much attention to this, your friend Bob or your friend Sally down the street who just want to be able to pay their mortgage, want to be able to go to work, or, stay home with the kids and not have to worry about whether school's going to be open or closed because of politics. They could see all the things happening right now, and it wouldn't be unreasonable for them to come away with, well, maybe we need a change. Maybe we need a change from the Trump. I know he did a good job for 3 years, but, this COVID thing, and I think that's wrong, but I could at least see it. But Democrats decided to say, let's get rid of cops and let the criminals run wild and destroy things and rip down buildings. And let's have this whole national focus on white privilege and white supremacy and really how bad, particularly white males, are. Unless they're a liberal, then they're okay. So white male Republicans are the greatest evil, the greatest threat facing the country. That's what the Democrats decided to do in this 2020 pandemic year. And they're paying a price for it right now. They're scrambling to get back the messaging initiative. They're hoping to reframe the narrative. Joe Biden took his shot with, it's happening on Trump's watch. That's going to be tough because they were the ones saying all along that these were peaceful protests. They were the ones saying these movements were just and that this was necessary and needed. Now what are they saying? So Trump was right to want to send in the National Guard. So Trump was, or to send in the National Guard. Trump was right to send in federal law enforcement officers. Who is opposing all that? The Democrats. They can't, they're so crazy, even with the media in their pocket, even with all these built-in advantages the Democrat Party has from the control of institutions, particularly the control of institutions that disseminate information. Right? and train people ideologically one way or another. Well, they train them as leftists. They have all those advantages, but they've managed to create an issue that is so clear and important to people. You know, you see what's happening in Kenosha. That could be your town. Any town could be Kenosha. All it takes is one criminal to resist a cop, and there's an exchange of gunfire, and next thing you know, there's riots and looting and horrible things happening. Even if the cop was justified, still terrible things happening. It could be anywhere in the country. I think there are a lot of people in Ohio, in Wisconsin, certainly, Michigan, Florida, Pennsylvania, who see this and say, why would I put the Democrat Party in charge? They're going to tell me that after my business gets burned down, or after the home invasion that occurs, that maybe I just barely escape with my life because Democrats don't like cops and want to blame cops for the evils of society, and including many of the shortcomings of our society that are the result of Democrat welfare and anti-family policies. But then when all that happens, you know the Democrat Party will turn around and say, well, yeah, maybe you were the subject of an armed robbery or a home invasion or your business was burned down, but the underlying need for justice from these groups, we can't criticize that. Biden had to speak out against violence this week. Oh, he just figured out that violence was bad. That violence in the name of a political platform or ideas is not something we advocate for in America. It's terrorism, and it's also the death of civil society when people think that that's okay. So Biden spoke out, but also Kamala had some words. And so I did predict on this show, as you know, that Joe Biden was going to just say, well, it's all Trump's fault, the violence, etc. The Biden voters burning everything down, that Democrats, including governors and people that have state police powers that are supposed to be doing something about this, Democrats completely enabled these Biden voters, these lunatics. It's Trump's fault that this is happening. I mean, you can't make it up, but I saw it coming. I told you that was going to be his move, because what other move does he have at this point? They're beating up old ladies, breaking into Saks Fifth Avenue, stealing handbags, and saying they're doing it for justice or for reparations or whatever. What? Democrats. But Kamala Harris also spoke out on this one. Play clip 3.
People are rightfully angry and exhausted. And after the murders of Breonna and George and Ahmaud and so many others, it's no wonder people are taken to the streets. And I support them. We must always defend peaceful protest and peaceful protesters. We should not confuse them with those looting and committing acts of violence, including the shooter who was arrested for murder. And make no mistake, we will not let these vigilantes and extremists derail the path to justice.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But here's what she's doing. She's telling us all that the real focus here. I mean, yes, of course, she says don't blame the peaceful protesters for what the. But the what's the difference? They have a protest and then there's looting every night. They have a protest and there's riots every day. We're going to pretend these things aren't, one isn't leading into the other? Why don't we hold the people that are marching one second, breaking into stores, or burning down buildings the next responsible for it? Oh, but let's focus in on the shooter. Let's focus on that. As if that's the real answer to all of this, is one guy who carries a rifle and is attacked by somebody else with a handgun, 2 white guys who get into a fight. One of them shoots the other one, or I guess there's 2 white guys that he shot, but these people are getting into a street brawl because of the militant tactics of the left. It looks like self-defense to me. We'll see, maybe not. And I've seen differing analyses on how the any possible gun charge or use use of the law against Rittenhouse may go. But that's the one person that Kamala calls out here as the real problem, of course, because he's associated with being a white nationalist and a Republican, even though there's nothing to prove that he's a white nationalist at all. He said he was supportive of the peaceful protesters, and he was cleaning up graffiti before the incident happened. Here we are. Kamala doing exactly what we knew she would. Yeah, the real problem are those Republicans that want the buildings to stop burning down. That's what they're telling you. That's what they're telling you. That's what they want you to know. Unbelievable, friends. Unbelievable. But I can't really say that because entirely predictable in the same way. The polls are starting to show it. I'm seeing polls in Michigan, polls in Wisconsin. It's increasingly clear that Democrats going into this summer, they had so much enthusiasm. They had quite an advantage, and they have just given it up. They've given it up. They can't help themselves. This is who they are. They watch, they read HuffPo. They think that Vox isn't a bunch of pseudo-intellectual beta males scribbling nonsense about how there's actually 57, not 37 genders, right? They think this stuff is true. They're living in an alternate reality. And while there are a lot of other Democrats that want to live in that alternate reality with them, swing voters, independents, people that are still making up their minds about stuff are looking at all this and saying, I don't think I want to vote for crazy this time around. I think I'm going to ride out this whole Trump approach of America first and prosperity and everyone having a better shot at a better future. I think I'm going to give that another go here. Let's hope so.